Hello there and welcome back to part 6 of the tutorial. In this one we're going to just tidy the code a little again and get the spider in so that we can start working on the animation. So hopefully this one won't be too long. I thought about it and I was just not too happy about how messy this code is, especially as we're going to build more into it. So we're just going to pull these parts of the code out just like I did with moving. Now what we're going to do is if you highlight this, Visual Studio is pretty clever. If you highlight the bit that you want to remove, you can actually refactor it without any stress. So if you click on Edit, go down to Refactor and then Extract Method. The shortcut is Control R then Control M, and then it just puts your cursor where you need to be. And this was I'm going to call this on idle. Just type in on idle and press enter and it does it all for you. So it's called the function here, and it's created a private void function on idle down here. It's left all the code as it was. So that's tidied things up a little bit. We've also got the attacking to do, so I'm going to do the same thing, and you'll be amazed at how clever this is. But because we've got a parameter that doesn't exist, it's passed. It needs to be set as a parameter. If you click on Edit, Refactor again, and then Extract Method, it's clever enough to include that as the parameter. So we're gonna call this one on attacking, and then press enter. This can get a bit confusing. Dist and dist this is the local one. This is the parameter that's passed to it, and we're just using it again here in the last one. When we refactored, we changed the name, but it'll still work. Just don't get confused. It's not the same one. It's well, it is the same one, but it's been passed as a parameter because we need it, because we've created it up here. So this looks a lot neater, this little switch statement in here. Ideally as well, we don't want to be setting, and I mentioned it in the last tutorial, that we don't want to be setting the destination every single frame, but with I think we'll leave that to a much later video where we can turn that into a coroutine so we don't happen all the time. So let's get on with making this the animations work. This looks nice and neat now. So everything is saved. We'll go back to here. Inside, as long as you downloaded the pack from the link in the very first video, you should have the spider prefab. If you don't have the spider prefab with the spider animator, then I may include this as a link in this video, but we'll see about that. So we'll get into getting this organized. So the spider prefab has everything that it needs to work. If you simply drag and drop it onto the enemy right now, you'll see that you get the spider, and it should have all its materials set up as we had in the previous bunch of tutorials, and it's a bit too big right now, but I'm not going to stress too much. The capsule now we don't actually need, and we're going to click delete, and we'll notice that the spider has the armature and the sphere underneath it, and these don't have any colliders, and that's kind of what we want. We don't want the raycast that we're doing to get in the way of that. So the enemy now has this very small cylinder, and that's the nav mesh agent. We're just gonna maybe scale this spider down a little bit. So if we say 0.25 for each of them, 0.25 and 0.25, then it's going to be a lot closer to the size of the nav mesh agent that we've got. So we'll zoom in just a touch so we can still see what's going on. The only thing we need to do, if we run this right now, you'll see that everything should work. That the inside of the scene view, the spider is actually animating. It's got the animator already on it. It's running through the idle animation, and that's done through the animator controller that we have right here. But we need to be able to switch states based on the state inside of its AI. So I can jump back into the scene view. If I move the player and I bring him close and put him into view, you see it does move just as it did before. But we do need to switch those states so that we get it working a little bit better. So let's just go straight to that. So the way that we're going to have to do this is we're going to need a handle to the animator. So I'm going to make this a public one. We're going to use a drag and drop method. So I'm going to make this a public animator, and we're going to call it animator. That's the suggested name from Visual Studio. So public animator, and we're going to drag and drop that on. We'll just do it now before we forget. So the enemy, you'll see this is where the enemy script is. This is the public animator that we need, and it's on the spider. And again, Unity is clever enough to be able to take the component from any object you drag and drop on. So it knows that it's looking for the actual animator component on this game object that I dropped on. So the animator component, you'll see from the animator where we have some parameters that we need to check. So if I look at the animator again, we've got a one called walking, which is a boolean, true or false. When he's walking, we want that, and we've got an attack, which is just a trigger, and it triggers once, and then attacks. Runs the attack animation and then goes back to either walk or idle, depending on whether walking is set. So we will jump to those and set them correctly. So if we take a good think about this, if we want on attacking, so if we are less than 2, we probably want on the attacking, let's think about this, if we're on idle and we move to moving, we want to set the animator walking to true. So we're going to animator set bool and choose walking, and it was all lowercase, and we set that to true. So that's as easy as that. So this is when we're in idle. If we see the player, then we set the state to moving, and then we set the animator, and that should continually loop. When we are moving, if we can still see the player, we're setting that destination, so the animator will still be on walking equals true, but we need to, when we can't see the player anymore, so inside this inside this else statement, once we're in AI state idle, we want to set the animator's state, so the animator dot set bool walking, comma false, oops, walking, comma false, and that way it will jump back to, when we jump to idle again, we go back to the idle animation, so the walking becomes false, which should play the idle animation. Inside the attacking, so when we set our state to attacking, we want to trigger an attack, so we'll do animator dot set trigger, and the trigger was attack. And if I quickly jump back to Unity and just check that they're all lowercase, so the trigger attack we would set when we enter into attack state, and walking would be set true or false based on what state we're in. So let's give that a go. So what I might do is I might just rotate this guy around a little bit so that he's kind of like facing over this way, and you notice I'm rotating the whole enemy, not just the spider mesh there. If I look at the forward vector of the enemy, it is in that direction. So let's just test and run. So we should have an idle animation playing, and we should be able to pick up the player and put him in front, and it should trigger the walking animation. He walks probably a bit too fast, and he jumps back to idle again. If he gets close enough, he enters the attack. Yeah, he's gone back into this because the attack hasn't triggered again. So if we have a little think about that, so there's probably a complicated way of doing this and probably an easy way of doing this, and to keep things as simple as possible, I think what we'll do is just turn this attack, rather than have it as a trigger, we can have this as a boolean. So we're going to create a bool, it's a true false, and we'll call this attacking, and that means we can just delete this one. So if you right click on it and click delete, it gets rid of it, So this is now a true false. The transition here, attacking, we need to change the condition for this transition to be attacking and say it's true. So if attacking is true from any state, it will go into the attack. And then for the conditions to move to walk or idle, we're going to add the condition that the attacking is false, so that it'll allow it to be looped. So I'm going to add the condition also to the transition for idle, from attack to idle, as attacking is false. So if you're no longer attacking, you'll go to idle or you'll go to walk based on whether the walking condition is true or false. And it's starting to get, you can see it's not exactly complicated, it's already starting to get pretty complicated. So the attack animation here, we could allow the attack animation to loop as well. I just cleared up that error. So I'm going to look at that attack animation right now. If we go into the project, into the models, and you'll see that the clip that we have, if we open this up, the clip for attack is currently not looping, so we should try to make that loop. So if we go to the model, click on spider, the main one, and in the animations tab where we've got the attack, we can go down just beyond where the start and end time is and click on loop time. So the attack will continue to loop. I've applied those changes before we do this. So any state will transition, from any state you can transition to attack if attacking is true. And then when attacking is false, it will drop to one or the other of walk or idle. So that was one solution for a rather simple problem. I'm sure we could have coded a solution, but I think that was probably the easier one. So if we look at the code again, we've got on attacking. So when we set the animator when we're inside the moving and we decide that we're going to attack, it's no longer set trigger, it is set bool of attacking is what we called it, and we set that to true. What we need to do as well when we're doing this on moving, if we're currently attacking here, the distance is greater than 2, we need to set the attacking animator back to false. So animator dot set bool, and we'll say attacking, and it is false. So when we drop out of that state, so we're no longer attacking, we need to set the bool back to false. So let's take a little look at this and see how it goes. We need to make a couple more changes. Coding never works first time. It's always a bit of trial and error, and debug.log, by the way, is quite a handy thing if you're having trouble. So we've got the player. We should be able to pull the player over. Should get close to it. Should set attacking, so it's constantly attacking. It's not playing the entire animation for some reason. Maybe look at why it's doing that, and then it goes back into the walk animation when it goes back to here. And the reason that the animation isn't playing all the way through, after having a little look through the code, is one of those really annoying errors in that in the animator, when we create this any state, we had the transition from any state, we need to make sure that we tick has exit time. That means that it's not going to happen, then it's going to happen when it finishes the entire animation. It's going to re-evaluate the state again. So that's pretty much it. The one thing while we're here is this this attack. The speed was quite slow, like it wasn't doing very fast. So if I make the speed 5, it should play it an awful lot faster. So if I hit play and hit scene, we should be able to pull the player in. When it sees it, it should come up to it and it should attack it. So it looks like it's going a bit mental. So 5 might be a bit too much, but we've got a pretty good AI. So I'm going to pretty much finish that series. Obviously, the player, if you have an AI, a first-person controller that you want to use, or you can use my video tutorial series for making the first-person controller. All you need to do is tag it as player, have some kind of collider that's tagged as player, that is, and then this AI will work, so it'll be able to move towards you, and you'll be able to sneak around behind it too, so you can move in behind. There's heaps more we can do, and if you have any, just subscribe, make any comments. If you have anything you want to add or ask, then please feel free. But I'm gonna finish this video now because it got really long. So hopefully you've enjoyed the series, and please feel free to subscribe and comment. Cheers.